So this is YouTube Live. Hello, this is Chris Gazdick, and that is Victoria Pendergrass.
Hi.
We are here to talk about sensory defensiveness this week. If you're catching us for the first time on the YouTube Live version, this is before we turn the mics on for the actual show. We do this about Thursdays at 6:15. It's a great way to interact with us while we do the show. We can incorporate your thoughts and comments as we go. So tell all your friends, 6:15, usually we're ready to rock and roll, and we are on time today, man. We are crushing it. We are without John Pope. He has got a prior engagement that he needed to engage, so he's engaging. Yeah.
Good?
We're good.
Yeah.
Now we'll do the big intro, I guess.
Yeah. Not too much to talk about. So then what are the three questions then if it's
you'll hear them. I wrote them on mine. You have the ones for next week.
Oh, this is next week's
That's next
questions.
week's questions,
but
yes.
this week's content.
Correct.
Okay.
I screwed up.
Jeez, Chris.
I mean, I do that a lot in different ways.
Yeah.
Yes, we ready?
Yeah, let's get it going.
Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, coming to you on July the 11th, 2024. So we are going to be talking about sensory defensiveness, which is a different kind of topic today than we've had before. I don't think we've talked about this a whole much. And Victoria, your reaction to the topic was perplexing to me. More on that.
Yeah, I feel like you were shocked more than the fact I'd never. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how Victoria comes along because I think you got a lot more than what you thought.
Probably.
What you think. But what is sensory defensiveness? What causes sensory defensiveness? And what do we do about sensory defensiveness? I guess my questions aren't very profound this week, are they?
It's okay. They don't always have to be.
We are
Sometimes simple is good.
We are without John Pope this week. He is engaging some business that he needed to do.
Yeah.
But we have Miss Victoria Pendergrass. How
Hi.
you doing? You had a busy day today, didn't you?
I did have a pretty full day.
Yeah.
I was supposed to have an actual full day, but my 3 o'clock canceled yesterday, which is fine. I went and got some coffee with a shot of espresso.
Oh, boy. So this is where you get insights
so.
directly in your home or car from a panel of therapists. We all work in the mental health field day to day. I got that book coming out December the 17th. The new Volume 2 of Through a Therapist's Eyes is coming out. We're going to build excitement for that. Definitely tell your friends about the YouTube lives on Thursdays. Click subscribe. That's your job. It helps us get found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that kind of good stuff. And contact at Through a Therapist's Eyes is where we get the emails that you can tell us how awesome we are.
And last but not least,
we do what? We do
not offer
forget.
therapy services.
Just kidding. We don't deliver therapy services on this show of any kind. But this is the human emotional experience, which we do endeavor to figure out together. So, first of all, I'm going to follow through on a pledge. And the pledge that I said, the pledge that you remember the pledge?
That we were going to start pointing out
Yeah.
more followers, subscribers, or whatever.
Oh, no,
one?
That's the other one. The first one on the show notes there is anytime I see a mention of menopause.
That's right. Okay, I did. Yeah, you did
I
say
want to
that.
bring it up and just kind of continue to further our national dialogue on an issue that I feel like is just not talked about and not covered. So I did a piece with Authority Magazine. It was a pretty cool piece, and so I get heads up on topics they may do. If I ever want to dive back in, I can maybe be featured again with them. And I'm not going to put effort to it, but they do have an article coming up, Thriving Through Menopause, 5 Actions to Take for Women Over 45. And I just thought that was awesome, because there's lots of questions out there. And, a pretty big publication is taking on the topic, and I just haven't seen that very much.
Yeah.
And
I literally just talked about menopause today with one of my clients. So.
Well, it's something that I think we're beginning to identify a lot of mental health realities with.
Yeah.
And so we're getting knowledge, we're sharing it, and I think the world dialogue is starting to happen a little bit more about it, which is nothing but crucial for not just women, for men.
Well, yeah,
also.
and I think and I'm not sure if we pointed this out when we did our episodes on it, but like this is literally something that basically every person will experience, right?
Yeah,
like there's
absolutely.
there's not women that are like immune to menopause.
How is it that we've been so ignorant
Right.
about it this
So
whole
it's
time
like,
is amazing.
So it's like, what? Yeah, why? I love it when there's more information out because it's literally like it's not like you can just.
The scariest part is not
It's not
knowing.
like we have the Click remote from the movie Click, and we can just fast forward to past the menopause years.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I know, right? But like, yeah. So I think that this is good.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to highlight also a YouTube exchange that we had. I told you Cord. His name, I guess, is CordFuse6893. I'm guessing that's not the real name, Neil. Is that? He shakes his head and smiles, saying, maybe not the real name, but they go by Cord6893. Neil, it might be good for your mic if you got it on. Do you remember the conversation me, and Adam had at the review?
Yeah, we talked about the social media exodus and those types of things.
Yeah. So they said that basically, what is this? And I was maintaining that I think people are going to be leaving social media. And I said in droves. That's probably, overblown. But you and Adam thought what?
I think they're shifting social media. I think it's just some newer thing. And I don't know. I feel like there's too much of a... Well, even he talked about, I think in his comments, he would go play games with this, go play games on his computer versus being on his phone. So it's kind of shifting some stuff.
His
right?
nephew, yeah,
his nephew. That's what it was.
Does. I just he said, "What is this?" Somebody made the comment, and I explained this was Adam and Neil completely disagreeing with me about this, and somebody else chimed in, Cord. And I thought his comments were absolutely cool because I'm really developing, Victoria, an observation that the younger folks, Gen Zers, are really going to be figuring out our footing as a human race with this whole thing of social media. And I feel like they're kind of realizing this is kind of causing harm and I don't like it. And they're getting away from it. My thoughts originally came from my son, who basically, I'm observing, we hadn't really talked about it, but basically, you do the Snapchat, you worry about your streaks, you're taking a half-face picture and sending it to your friends. It's kind of like Instagram this and that and everything. And, you live with it. Your phone is attached to you. And but then the younger generation is getting older. I mean, my kid's 22 now, and he's like, I think inherently in his mind, like, I don't want to do that kid stuff. Like, I don't think he does any of that stuff much no more.
Yeah.
So
I haven't used Snapchat in years.
I mean, you're older than the Gen
But now my
Z.
husband uses it every day.
Well, it's still going to hang on. But
he's also older than me, though, so yeah, he would.
But then you have also Facebook. Like, I don't want to do the old people thing, so I think they're just like, okay, you know what? I don't need to post my life on a timeline.
Well, and I think it is also, and I don't know if y'all ever touched on this because I didn't listen to the episode yet, but like it also is, I think, the purpose that you use social media for. Like for some people, it's their job. Like they make money by, so then they're more adamant.
Market.
Yeah, they're more adamant to like they have to put like right now is the it's about to be like the Nordstrom's annual sale or whatever. So like all the influencers I follow, like that's all they're posting about is all these things that they're finding from Nordstrom, which is a store I don't even shop at. Like, so I just tap through all those stories because I don't care to see them. But like, yes, I mean, I think it depends on also like now that I read more, I don't pick up my phone as often, but because I'm reading my Kindle
and
instead.
Changing. News will still stay in there. But Cord kind of was interesting. So he says, I'm Gen Z and actually find this kind of relatable. Actually, I barely use social media for photos of myself, but read a lot of news on there. I'm gamer, so I read gaming news and regular news. I do still talk to my friend basically every day on the app Messenger, but mostly it's for talking. I do agree about realizing the toxic use of Instagram. I once had a fan page, but honestly, I found myself just leaving due to massive stress. When I was at school, my teachers noticed her children didn't use mobile phones at all, and she believed children won't like using phones in the future. And this part I thought was really fascinating. Neil, you pointed it out. When I visited my nephew, I usually see his phone just left on the couch while he's in his bedroom playing games. It's crazy seeing the world change. When I was growing up, and my friends at school were basically addicted to our devices.
You literally like there was a point in time in my life where if you saw me, my phone was at least 2 feet in a parameter.
It's a new phenomenon.
Me,
I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's a new phenomenon that I think we're really trying to get our footing at how to handle it. and what to do with it. Like, it really does have some damaging impact when you're consumed by it, and it can be an overwhelming distraction.
Yeah.
For particularly school and all. So I even think that we're going to start having laws about all this. So it's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But let's get to sensory defensiveness.
Yeah, let's get to it.
So,
you want to tell them about your reaction to when you don't, or my reaction? Your
Go
reaction
ahead.
to my reaction?
go ahead. What was all
So
that?
we were sitting in here in Chris's office. Actually, I was sitting where Chris was, and I go, "Hey, what are we talking about today?"
You were sitting where Chris was?
Where Chris is. Sorry. English. Ask my clients today. English has been hard for me all day.
All
so
day.
I'm gonna apologize in advance for.
Come on, man. Come on.
But I was like, "What are we talking about today?" He said, "Oh, we're talking about sensory defensiveness," and I was like, "What?"
I think you said, "What is that?"
What is that? And Chris, when I tell you, Chris's jaw was like on the floor. He was like, "You don't know what that is?" And I was like, "I don't think so. Like, I've never heard necessarily that phrase before."
And it's fascinating to me that you didn't. And I think that when we get into it, you're going to realize more of what it is. But it's interesting to me because I don't feel, somewhere in my show prep, I made the statement that occupational therapy, I think, soundly has our field beat in dealing with this. Like, I don't think therapists are as in tune to this as we probably need to be. And I think my theory with that is because people might see it as more of a medical issue and isn't a therapy issue. But now, that being said, no, sensory defensiveness is a big deal. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident you've got more thoughts about it than what you
I
are
realized,
thinking. Yeah.
not realizing it's associated to
Yeah,
this word.
and in part, I changed it because I know you've been genuine, and we appreciate your forthrightness about having ADHD. And it's a big ADHD issue. Is kind of why my jaw dropped.
Yeah, I figured that's why.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, how does she not
know what this is?
like? You might have them, and
right.
honestly,
I can guarantee you, just based off the name of it, I probably do.
right.
But
I find a lot of people don't realize it.
Yeah.
And it's maddening when you have this experience, like nails in a chalkboard to something.
Yeah.
And you don't know why you're reacting that way.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing that we've talked about before with, it seems like with, or at least I'm assuming, with diagnosis, how just being able to put a name to something that you experience, or to have something, even medical diagnoses, like to be able to put a name to this experience or thing that you've dealt with for like multiple years or whatever, like that in itself can be liberating and be refreshing to like say like, oh, well, I actually have a name for this thing that I've been like struggling with for whatever, many years or whatnot.
Yep. Shout out to JB. This is J.B. This was a show long coming that was in my list. Neil, your idea was in there for about 2 weeks. This one's been in there for a minute.
The sensory defensiveness?
Yeah, and because it's something that we kind of identified, and it was like, oh wow. So more on that later. What is sensory defensiveness? So basic ChatGPT is pretty accurate. Sensory defensiveness is a condition where individuals have an overreaction or extreme sensitivity. But that's an important word, extreme sensitivity to sensory stimuli. So it can include touch, sound, light, smell, taste, actually movement as well. It's often associated with sensory processing disorder, which is actually a diagnosable thing that I wonder how many clinicians diagnose, Victoria,
Probably not a lot.
And it also being present as a adjunct component to different diagnosis, very much on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
A big part of ADHD. Also can be associated or a big part of anxiety disorders that people are struggling with, right? So, yeah, I mean, auditory, obviously, sounds, loud noises, fireworks.
You should be able to name one of mine.
Why?
It happens in the lobby of this. What argument do I have in the lobby all the time?
The TV's too loud.
No.
Oh, no? The lights?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can't stand fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think? Okay, for those that have ever been in my office that have watched this, I use lamps.
Yeah.
In my office, and we have an alternate in our lobby. We have the option of doing the fluorescent lights or like the little.
Are you the one always messing with the lights?
Yeah, if you see it switched off the fluorescent lights, I turn that off, and I turn on the other lights that are a lot dimmer and don't give me a headache.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and DW does the same thing. Because I hate them. And like even like I would love for you to put lamps in this even the like I don't ever say anything, but
Well, I do that purposely because these are daylight lights,
Right.
and I don't have any windows in this particular
Right.
office, so
Yeah.
they're valuable to me
well,
for that
but
reason.
the thing is I like it. Well, one, it helps me. But in my office, people tell me all the time how homey and like welcoming my office feels.
Yeah.
Because I use lamps with regular lights,
See,
warm lights instead of the daylight.
See, here's the thing as we go through this. The experience of having sensory stimulus bother you in some way is much more common than I think people think. The severity levels, though, such as like a child with autism, has a high level of disruption in their life with this to the point that they can't cope.
Well, and yeah, I was gonna say theirs is probably a little bit more noticeable by other
Right.
people. Like you don't see me, like I don't sit here every Thursday and go, "Oh my god!" But I don't have an outwardly, yeah, like I
cope with it.
can manage. I'm fine for the hour or so that we're in this room,
Right.
and then now if I had to like work in this office every day, we might have a different issue.
Right.
But like, yes, for someone who has like very severe autism, they're gonna it's not just going to be an inward reaction. Sometimes it's going to be like a verbal or a other type of like.
Yeah, it's called self-stimming.
Right.
Their self-stimming is the way that it's called, and that is like tapping, hitting,
Spinning in circles.
spinning, tongue movements, taste. So there are different types. Auditory, obviously, great sounds, loud sounds, or particular sounds. Tactile is very common. Little kids with the tags in the back of their itchy sweaters and stuff. Now, you got to understand, no one likes an itchy sweater, but when you have a sensory defensiveness, the extreme level is
Like most people
high.
can cope with it.
We can all cope with
Right.
it, usually. People with sensory defensiveness, they can't stand it.
Yeah. Like they're probably going to have a meltdown until
It's
they can change their shirt.
disruptive.
Yeah.
Visual, you were just talking about lights and things like that. Olfactory, people have things that they don't like the smell of.
Okay.
This isn't allergetic. There's no allergies involved. This is I have a chalkboard reaction to this.
This is like when I was pregnant, and if I smelled fish of any kind,
It is.
would literally.
You know what? That's interesting. Yeah.
like, and I think I've said this before, that when my husband would cook salmon or something when I was pregnant, he would have to boil a pot of vinegar while he was cooking the salmon to
Wow.
like mask the salmon smell in our house so
Yeah.
that I wouldn't. And I would still sit there with like my shirt over my nose, like I'm gonna throw up. This is awful.
We're going to talk about the cause, which is
And that was just because I was
You know.
pregnant. I mean, other than that, I love salmon. Like I love fish. But
we'll get to the cause
Yeah.
because, frankly, we don't understand the cause.
yeah.
Okay.
And then
Olfactory, gustorial is eating and stomach taste.
so would that
the
be
digestion,
like? Would that be like textures of food
textures
and stuff?
of food? Mm-hmm. Vestibular is movement and balance. People get really, really panic stricken in cars sometimes, or various sensations of movement and all. I mean, this is a well varied process, or
Okay,
a well
so I
varied
basically knew what
experience
this was. I just didn't know that it had the name.
called sensory
Yeah.
defensiveness. Yeah.
So I'm not completely out of touch.
What is this? How can we convey, Victoria, what this is really like to experience? You're saying a little bit about lights.
Okay.
First of all, I'll ask you a direct question.
Yeah.
Do you have any that causes you, I'm going to say, significant or borderline major disruption as it relates to the ADHD symptomology? Sounds like a no.
I'd have to think about it. Nothing technically comes to my head. It's like that in relation to like my ADHD. But also I feel like I'm kind of put on the spot, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, but as far as thinking about describing the experience, excuse me.
Have you seen this in a lot of kids?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the image comes to mind of like if you were on a roller coaster that you never been on and somebody blindfolded you.
Oh, that's good.
Like that was like the first image that came to my head. Like,
Yeah.
and you had no idea like which direction you were going, what was coming up, what was happening when you were going upside down, how
Okay.
fast you were going.
Terrifying.
Yeah, like if someone put you on a roller coaster you didn't know the outline of, that you never been on, and they blindfolded you.
Yeah, I like that. That's
Like
a good
I
one.
feel like that's a fit pretty good. Like because a lot of times it's sometimes things you don't have control over.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I go into a doctor's office, I can't control the lighting that they have. I can't if I go to therapy, I can't control the fabric of their couch.
Mm-hmm.
Like your couch is leather here or whatever.
Yeah.
Mine is cloth.
Right.
So like even that is like you and I think sometimes
Well, let me add there, because yeah, you're right on point with that. The disruption comes in when you really can't stand something and you know that you're going to see it in the world and you have to tolerate being in the world, and everyone else tolerates it just fine, but it's like you're blindfolded on that roller coaster and everyone else is having a different experience, and you pick up on that and begin to know it.
Yeah.
Then you begin to ask, like, what the hell is wrong with me? Why is this so bothersome? I know by looking at everyone else it shouldn't be,
right.
but it is. And kids especially don't have the verbal ability
that's where
to say what's going on for them.
Is sometimes is that like they're feeling these big emotions, or they're having these big responses to these different types of defensiveness, and they like don't know how to say that. Like they don't know how to go to their parent and say like, this lighting is
they just start complaining and throwing a tantrum.
Yeah, they throw a tantrum, and then the mom's like, well, like, what the heck is going on? You love this shirt or you love this food, but like, or and sorry, I'm like shedding over here.
What are you doing? Come to us, Victoria.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm distracted by my hair. But yeah, like they don't have the words. Or I think, and we might get into this later so you can tell me, but I think also sometimes parents don't have like the empathetic understanding.
They don't know.
Of like, or when their kid comes to them and say, I hate wearing this shirt because it's itchy. Or they just come to them and say like, I hate wearing this shirt.
It gets shrugged off.
Yeah, your parent, the mom, dad is just like, deal with it. You got to wear clothes today. Like that was, my kid did not want to put on a shirt today. And I was like, dude, you got to wear a shirt to go to daycare. Yep. And now, could that have been a sensory defensiveness? I don't know. But like, because he's 2 and he literally says.
Well, that's the thing.
His vocabulary is very limited.
Again, understand how normal this can be, and the typical experience with it when something bothers you is you just cope with it.
Right.
But with people that are really struggling with this, like the nails on chalkboard, that's not typical.
Right.
It's not typical, I'm saying. Okay. Then you have the battles, and then you have the distress, and then you have the behavior.
Right.
Because, again, kids can't convey what is going on for them. So that's where it begins to be much more disruptive.
The kid themselves, how do I say this? They may not be able to identify it within themselves.
Right.
Like, is that what you're also saying?
Right.
Like, the kid may not be able to identify that it's the texture of the shirt
or
is
food.
Why they, or like the texture of the consistency of the food is why they're freaking out. Like, they may not even be able to, like, depending on their age, be able to, like, associate that's, let alone the parent not being able to realize it. Like, the kid may not even realize.
And now you're in a power struggle.
Right.
Right. Okay, let's talk a little bit about a very confusing piece of this. Let's do a segment here on what causes this. And right from the get-go, honestly,
Flat answer is we don't know.
we don't know. We really
hate
don't
to
know.
break it to you out
Yeah,
there.
you know,
but-
and I think that honestly, for me, Victoria, I think
excuse me.
that's because it has a lot to do with, the system, the neurological systems in our body that we're really learning a lot about.
yeah.
Because again, of the normalcy of this, it's so normal to have some sensory experiences that you cope with and don't like, but sensory defensiveness is like accentuated with that. And I think it has to do with body systems we just don't understand yet.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a part of different diagnostics. It's a part of, different factors. So we talk a lot about the neurological system in this, and then the genetic factors are a factor.
Right.
As with most things, if you have family members that had this kind of experience, there's a good chance that you will as well. So we know there's like some hardwiring with this.
A little bit.
There's
Yeah.
biological hardwiring that's going on.
But the thing is like, how do you study that? Like
Well,
how do you like,
Neurology.
yeah, like how do you put that in a case study or whatever to say like,
Well, we have a lot of those. We have a lot of those. But just to go on a little further, what's curious to me are environmental factors. Like the experiences that we have drive how we experience stuff.
it's like the nature versus nurture kind of
Kind of is a lot of the nature-nurture question. And people will have reactions based on trauma or, big events or situations or people that really bothered them, and that plays out subconsciously into your many years later conscious experience.
Can I give an example?
Sure.
Okay, so I may or may not have mentioned on here before, but I don't have the best driving track record.
Oh dear.
I've
Look
been
out
in,
for Victoria
I've
on the
been in,
roads.
I've been in a. Hey, now I have what's quite different now. I have a 2-year-old in the backseat of my car most of the time, and that
Yeah.
drastically changes how I drive. But
It's a total ADHD thing, though, isn't it?
yes. Anyway, see, look, you're distracting me. So I've been in a number of car accidents. None really I haven't never been like injured or anything like that. But I will tell you, if there is a certain smell that happens when cars wreck, I can't even describe it. It's like a rubbery, oily,
Burnt rubber.
tire-ish
Mhm.
smell. If I smell that, I will literally have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Because it sends me into like all the times which that sounds so bad, all the times that I've like wrecked my car and have smelt that like from my own experience. Like I had one time when I was living in Hickory, I had my window down. I was sitting at a light and a wreck happened right in front of me. Like a small car hit a truck that was trying to turn, and my window was down, and I instantly smelled that smell, and I almost like threw up in my car. Like it was like an instant, like I had to roll up my window. I blasted my air to like get the smell out of my brain. It was like so like the trauma of, I guess the point of that is like the trauma from my previous experience with that specific smell. Now it's not as bad because it's been a long time since I've been in a wreck, but is that like,
I really
totally
feel like
off
there's a
base there?
difference because I have an example of myself with hospitals when I was a kid.
Right.
Going in for outpatient ear surgeries would lead to me being terribly nauseated from the anesthesia 2 or 3 days in the hospital. And this was like an annual thing for me. So the hospital smell
Yeah.
and the whole sterile environment really bothered me. But I think there's very much a difference, and this is just me talking, between trauma experience, which triggers through stimuli a reversion back into that trauma. I feel like that's a little different
So am I off
than
base
sensory
a little bit? Okay.
defensiveness. No, I don't think you're off base. I think it's
Okay.
working on the same systems. I think
Okay.
the component of just a genetic, biologically based experience that an autistic kid is having with sensory defensiveness
is
kind of
similar
puts it,
to the trauma.
but it puts it on a higher level of
Right,
disruption.
okay.
Trauma triggering, I feel like, can more easily be dealt with
and like
by
coped and
by
stuff.
flooding and trauma recovery
Right.
and all
okay.
that stuff.
Okay.
Then your experience is not the same. It's resolved. Whereas sensory defensiveness in its truest form, I don't know that we have a lot of resolving of that. So I think there is a little bit of a difference, although, they're kissing cousins.
Okay. I
Right.
can see what you're saying.
Because in my
So
show,
you're saying like the example that I gave is more of a traumatic response than like a sensory.
as with mine in the hospital,
Yeah. Okay.
right? But I think there's still a defensiveness in
Even if it's only temporary.
in our emotional and physical experience. Our brains have interpreted this as danger or bad
Right.
or whatnot, and so that creates sensory defensiveness. But it's just, it's a different flavor.
Okay.
And this is why
I think I track what you're saying.
this is why we have neurological system and genetic factors, biological realities, and then emotional factors. The experiences that we're talking about are more the emotional factors. Also, the social interactions, right? Like, people will avoid the social situations or difficulty with like touch and closeness. Classically, we know victims of sexual abuse do not hold hands very well. They'll have a very light grasp, and that's a sort of defensiveness. But again, due to the trauma, even concentration, and this affects environments at work and tasks that you're doing, and all the daily activities like we talked about. So this is a curious discussion that I want to have at this point.
Okay.
Is this certainly, as I just said, more of a physical thing? Or is there emotional causes, such as the dog attack that somebody experienced and now freaks out about dogs? Anxiety, we do flooding techniques. Is this
Right.
like, how do we... It's hard to not really know what's going on, and I just try to differentiate between trauma effect and sensory defensiveness. Because if we go back to the tactile rubbing
Right.
that autistic kids will do, they'll rub their face like this. You
Yeah.
can see me on YouTube. This
Yeah.
is soothing to them. They're just, dramatically, doing slapping and touching.
Right.
And paper crumpling and
Yeah.
straightening, crumpling and straightening, crumpling and straightening. Like, is that a physical experience? Is that emotional experience?
Or is it both?
Is it both? How does this work? It's really curious.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's more like, I think it's hard to say that it's one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's just like how I don't think it's nature versus nurture. I think it's both.
Right.
Like, it's
Yeah,
a
and I guess I didn't plan
combination
this, and I just spent a little bit of time before I raised that
Yeah.
section on the difference. So I guess I'm obviously landing on there is differences, but I don't know what higher level neurologically based experts would say about it.
Yeah. Heck if I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to know.
Yeah.
But,
because they're going to talk about the genetic factors. They're going to talk about the systems of nerve and nerve
Right.
ending and...
But then, yeah, like what is something, okay, like the paper crumbling and straightening. Like, what of that is that anxiety? Like, because then that can be like an anxious induced, like when you're anxious, that could be something
Right.
you have, like you do. Actually,
Right.
I'm thinking of a specific situation where a friend of mine did that. And
Right.
she even pointed it out. She was like, "Oh, you could probably tell I'm super anxious because I've crumbled and straightened this paper like 17,000 times or whatever." But like, yeah. So the difference between that or something that happens like what, more repetitively or more like severely? Is that what we're saying? Like,
disruption. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like now, so then that would almost be like a kid who's disrupting class because he won't stop clicking his pen because there is something in the room, whether it's tactile, whether it's whatever sensory issue it is, that is like setting them off. Is that like...
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like that's a lot of a neurological thing that gets disciplined, and the kid is not knowing what is going on. They're not doing that on purpose.
The kid is doing a lot of times. Okay. So the kid is then doing something that for them helps calm them down and helps soothe them.
Right.
But then they get confused when then they get yelled at.
Right.
Or they get like disciplined, or, you know, they get sent to the office or whatever, ISS, OSS, whatever. Because it's disruptive, but then it's never addressed. Like, well, then,
what's
like,
going on?
What is the cause of them clicking the pen or crumpling the paper, or, you know, like tapping their foot, or like
any number of things.
And so then what happens, and as I feel like this is from my experience in schools, well, then that kid, if it's not addressed properly, like then that kid gets listed as like on the bad kid list or whatever. And then he or she becomes, oh, well, that's just because so-and-so likes to disrupt and da-da-da-da-da-da. They're doing it on purpose. They're doing it, you know, for the attention. Like they're part of like, well, this is like the quote unquote bad kid list. And then like, so then it almost like it gets swept under the rug. And then it never gets addressed, or it never gets like properly understood.
Diagnosed.
Yeah.
Really is a diagnosis issue.
Yeah.
You know, it's missed. It's just something that isn't thought about.
Well, because then there's accommodations that can be implemented through either a 504 plan or an IEP, which we don't have time to talk about that.
Well, let's go there in a bit.
Okay.
Let's go there in a bit. Because I want to give a good example of this in applying it to a therapy relationship where, you know, I worked with a person for a while and never really knew that they had thought they had ADHD per se. I never diagnosed it. We played around with, you know, some different things, some rule outs that we were working with. And one of the rule outs that he really wanted to rule out, which by the way is a clinical way of saying, like, I think you have anxiety, but we need to rule out that it's not bipolar or, you know, something else. So, you know, he really thought that he had social phobia. So this was devastating for him in so many ways, like skipping out on events, knowing that he's going to be irritable when, you know, they go to the amusement parks, and there was a lot of sound involved for him and different things. And I don't remember why, but something wasn't sitting right with me.
Okay.
And I felt like something was missed. And he was very appreciative when I brought up sensory defensiveness.
Okay.
And he went and he looked at it, and we talked more about it. And he was like, "Oh my God, like all my life, I've had this disruption, and I didn't understand." You know, and he's in his 30s, that this was something that wasn't my fault. And he explained like all of the things that he had missed, and all of the things that he thought about himself, and all of the friends and the opportunities that really were lost throughout all that time, just because he didn't know that he needed to do some of the basic things that he can do to help him soothe, which is noise-canceling headphones and taking breaks from stressful social events and then coming back to it. You know, helping himself understand, you know, he can wear sunglasses because his eyes, all of this stimulation, it's social events like light shows and, you know, dance bars and things like that. Just, he couldn't tolerate it.
Yeah.
He couldn't cope. And so when we figured out some coping things, he was like, this was a game changer for him. Total game changer.
So do you think that a lot of times people with, I'm just throwing this out there, people with sensory defensiveness sometimes misinterpret themselves for introverts?
100%.
God, I love this job.
100%.
Because I literally just talked to a client about this.
Okay.
And like, and I see them again next Wednesday, and
There you go.
cannot wait to like actually be able to like say, okay, first we're going to
Rule
talk
it
about
out.
this, and then you're going to go listen to this podcast episode.
Yeah,
because,
rule it out.
like, but
Listen, we
Yeah.
figure it out together.
yeah.
Because this is missed, Victoria, I think, in our work a lot.
So then, I guess for clarification, are we saying that people that experience this sensory defensiveness most likely have some sort of sensory processing disorder, such as autism,
No,
anxiety,
I feel
or ADHD?
No, I feel like sensory processing disorder is actually just a thing in and of itself that is sort of, in my mind, like a grab all. If we don't know what's going on, like we know you don't have autism, we know you don't have anxiety, we know you don't have ADHD,
But you got
you've got
something.
these experiences going on
Right.
that are disruptive enough. And we probably wouldn't see that in therapy very much.
Okay.
But you would see that in schools like all the time, right?
100%.
That they don't have other coexisting conditions, but they have these experiences. So we'll call it, the processing disorders. But oftentimes when you see a defensiveness like this,
Yeah.
it's going to be comorbid, means goes with
something
right?
else. Yeah.
ADHD or anxiety or
Right.
autism. Those are the big ones.
Sorry.
So-
That
No, it's okay.
distract you.
So what do we do? What do we do with this in therapy? I feel like occupational therapy, I've already said, OT folks have us way beat,
For sure. They have
Maybe.
a huge jump start.
right?
Head start, jump start, whatever.
Because
whatever the
they
term
work
is.
with this a lot more in schools, and they have so many cool, hairbrush tools, self-soothing strategies. They help people understand better what it is and really how to maintain it.
Right.
And that's what you get in sensory integration therapy. We talked about modalities last week. This is another one, guys, that we missed listening.
Yeah.
Because there are so many of them. But sensory integration therapy is a form of OT that basically creates structured exposure to the stimuli that's bothering you so that it helps your nervous system calm down. When you ever hear of the brushing techniques?
Yeah.
Right? See, you knew all this stuff,
Yeah.
man. The brushing techniques really is telling your nervous system, look, you're freaking out. And if you can't see listening, but I'm rubbing my hand, right? You're freaking out. You need to calm down. It's
yeah.
going to be okay.
Same
And-
thing as like ice chips, holding on to ice cubes.
Yeah.
Or I mean,
Instead of cutting.
Yeah.
Because also, by the way, cutting behavior with borderline personality disorder and depression, I feel like that's in this domain a little bit.
yeah,
It's not usually thought of in this
Right.
way with sensory experience. But I'm sorry, if you're numbed out and feeling depressed and you cut on your body, it's releasing
to
endorphins.
feel the pain. Yeah,
That's a sensory experience.
yeah,
See, this builds into things that therapists see all the time, but I don't know that we're thinking about this.
like relating
most of
it.
the-
Oh, hey, this could be us.
most of the time.
Yeah. No,
Right?
100%. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
We
Then-
got, sorry, go
Then
ahead.
we have behavioral stuff that
Right,
we're kind of
CBT.
doing as the standard stuff.
CBT, which is y'all probably talked about this last week, is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Correcto. Listen, I think insight about this is honestly bigger than most things.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that.
I mean,
this is-
we've talked about it. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, and I think we've hit that a lot today. But
Yeah.
when we're talking about, how do we approach this in therapy? What do we do with this? What do we try to guide you to do in coping? I really feel like, honestly, the biggest thing is just understanding that your body is different than other people's body. Your sensory experience is different, and that needs to be okay. I mean, I make fun of the, neurodivergence comments or labels
Yeah.
we get nowadays and some of the fun terms and memes and stuff. But it really is a divergent experience in your neurological system. And if you don't know that, you're going to feel crazy about this.
Well, I can even see it like causing rifts in relationships, and when your partner's like, well, why do you always act like this when this happens, and like
I'm gonna chime in because
Neil, got the mic.
that's half my household. My wife and my oldest kid are very sensitive. Their taste is heightened, their smell, their hear, like it's amazing what they can catch and do. And then my youngest and me are like, whatever, like we don't care. And so after being married 20 years, you realize like she's like, get away from me because I'm oversensitive, or like
Right.
we have to get in the car, turn the radio off because it's just too much at that time, or but then she'll leave the TV on. But that's a whole nother argument. That's a whole other. But no, it is
Nice.
definitely interesting. Like I don't think she has sensory defensiveness, but she definitely experiences things a lot more than I do, and it really makes an interesting thing when it comes to the relationship. So I'm glad you
Right.
hit that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I would also like to point out, if you agree, hopefully
Yep.
you agree with me, that like, again, we kind of already touched on it, but like, just because you have sensory defensiveness issues or whatnot does not mean like you're autistic, and it does not automatically mean that you have ADHD or that you have anxiety.
It really doesn't.
Because I think like a lot of times people like to joke around, and people will say like, you know,
Oh,
it's,
you're autistic.
it's the tism.
Yes, the tism.
It's the tism. But and that's jokingly, but like realistically, I just want to say like, just because someone says like, or we're talking about it, or it comes up in therapy, like it doesn't, we're not saying, oh, well, this means you have autism, or this means you have ADHD. So I just wanted to like make that
good
clear.
point. And another point of awareness, I'll put out different direction, but many people probably don't know that occupational therapy can be a thing. Like going to an occupational therapist when you identify these things in your child can really help your child, maybe adulthood too, but
Right.
more kids,
Yeah.
more children to cope and to learn about
Right.
what do I do to soothe myself. And occupational therapists are I mean, they're amazing. They're wonderful. They sit down with you just like therapists do, and work with you on your occupation or school functioning, and so that's like a thing. I don't think people
Yeah, I
know
don't
that
think
that's
people
a
have
thing.
a full understanding of
No.
what occupational therapy is.
No.
Honestly, I'm not even sure if I have
Well,
a full understanding of what
It's
occupational
unfortunate
therapy is.
because they don't just work in schools. They have practices and meet with people and help them with these
Yeah.
types of issues. For instance, I have a training that I went to that I wanted to highlight to help help us understand more of a how kids function on stimulation levels, where you'll see kids acting differently. And she talked about an autistic kid that she was working with, because they did all this stuff we're talking about, got violent in school, disruptive, terribly so, and the occupational therapist came in to work with this child. And one of the things that they really began to recognize is the whole continuum that people operate on insofar as learning. Some people are high stimulation learners, other
Right.
people are low stimulation learners. So the high stimulation learners are really, really stimulated and cannot focus until they have high levels of stimulation and activity, movement, body movement specifically, so that then when they get enough stimulation, now they're really ready to learn. But a low stimulation
Yeah.
person cannot tolerate all of this noise and all of this activity. And so they need to learn when things are calm before things get going on. That's their optimized learning curve. So just to draw that out, playtime with kids in elementary school, the low stimulation learners, they're like firing off like gangbusters, picking up information. And then as the class gets active and you go to playtime, like they're toast. They're a bump on a log. They're just like zombied because they can't handle all of that.
It's too much.
It's too much.
Yeah.
This autistic kid, the high stim learners, they took him and ran him, Victoria. They put him in a swing, and he just swang and jumped off the swing and ran into the wall and jumped and bumped. And I mean, he just went for like 3-4 hours. And finally, they observed that he was settling down, and they taught him the alphabet optimally during that time. And he knew it because this kid couldn't do anything in school,
Yeah.
right? So this is a powerful thing to really understand, like how we work, what our sensory experience is, how it creates dysfunction for us, disruption, and how we can use it to optimize our productivity.
I feel like this can even be extremely applicable for adults.
Oh yeah,
Like what
100%.
comes to brain. Oh my gosh.
Man, you are struggling.
What comes to my mind is like people who do their best work when they procrastinate.
Okay, what you mean by that?
Am I not getting like the same memo as far like people that wait until the last minute where they have all this pressure on them to like turn something in is when they do their best work? Is that not the same thing? I could totally be out there. Yeah, my brain
No,
is
I think it's
already
like our
kinda
earlier.
checked out.
No, I think you're on point. It's the earlier conversation of defensiveness versus sensory experience and the level of disruption.
Right.
That's all. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I did my best work in college at
Like, I
12,
know-
1,
yeah.
2 in the morning, man. That's when I'm
Yeah.
optimized, and particularly at that point in my life. Maybe not so much now,
Right.
but I did
Yeah, I don't
not
think
write
I
my
could
book
pull,
at 12
yeah, I
o'clock.
could not
That'd-
bring a pull an all-nighter.
That'd be bad at
nowadays.
this point.
Yeah.
But I wrote on, in the mornings on Saturday.
Right.
And that was optimal for me. So it's understanding what's going on.
Okay.
Right. How do we live with this? Let's wrap up with a segment here on what do we do to cope?
Absolutely nothing. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Mic drop. That's what's the opposite of a
The
mic
opposite
drop?
of mic drop.
So I want to caution here as I'm thinking about this to avoid simply avoiding things.
Okay.
Okay? We don't want to do that because we still need to live, we still need to function, we still need to go about our daily lives.
Well,
We
yeah.
need to kind of identify that, like my guy, I just need some sound canceling headphones and I'm
And I'm
good.
fine.
I'm fine. Or he just knows that he tells his wife, I listen, it's too much right now. We know why, because they learn together. And he goes and takes a 10-minute break quietly out in the car,
Right.
right? So, but we don't want to avoid going to the party or the event,
Yeah.
or we don't want to tell our kids you can't have sleepovers because it's too much for mommy
Right.
or daddy, right? So we don't want to just avoid things. I think that's the same thing that we see with what my guy thought he had, social phobia. He didn't have social phobia at all. But people that do have social phobia will avoid social events.
Right.
And
Well, so then
you
that's
know, in therapy, we just don't go with like, oh, okay, great, good job, avoid it.
yeah.
That's
well, yeah.
not what we do.
Well, and so then you create these like sensory friendly environments.
Right.
So
Which isn't avoiding the issue. It's mitigating some things that are easily mitigatable.
right. For example, the client I was talking about, I won't give too much detail, but they have a thing that a gathering that they're going to that
Okay.
they're going to be like 50 something people. And we talked about like very similar them bringing their noise canceling headphones,
Mhm.
but also like implementing breaks. It's okay for them to go up to their room if they're feeling a little overwhelmed or
Yeah.
a little overstimulated and they
Settle
don't want to like if they just want to pick a rocking chair on the porch and just watch all the events happen but not engage, like that is fine too. Living within what they're comfortable with, but not completely. They're still going to the thing instead of staying at home. They're
You don't have a
still
dog, do you?
Yeah, I do.
You do? Do
Yeah.
you ever use a thunder blanket?
She doesn't need one.
She doesn't need one? Do you know
Yeah.
where they are?
Huh?
Yeah, like basically.
Yeah, I know they are,
we
but
have,
she doesn't need one. No,
Again,
yeah.
another occupational therapy type thing. We'll give kids heavily weighted blankets.
Wait,
We'll-
yeah, I was about to say
we'll
weighted
give,
blankets. Yeah.
You know, tighter. Like I know a colleague of mine. He would say he never knew it, but his sensory defensiveness. He would take his wrists and grab them both, squeeze them, and then squeeze into his chest when he was upset because that really helped him calm down.
It's like
Right.
giving someone like usually someone with autism, but like giving them a hug.
Can be bad.
Well, sometimes
Or
they
good.
need the pressure.
Right.
So, okay, do you know who Temple Grandin is?
I do not. I live under a rock, Victoria.
Okay, Temple Grandin is a very famous autistic person. There's even a movie about her.
Okay.
And I think it's relatively based on her. She also has a book. I have her book. I can let you read it if you want to.
Okay.
But there's a part in the movie where she's like freaking out, and she is on her like family aunt's whatever farm, and the thing where when they're like branding a cow, it like squishes the cow. I don't know what the machine is called, but they like stick their head through, and then it like puts pressure on them.
Yeah.
She gets in that.
Really?
And like ask her aunt or whoever to like
To squeeze
like to enclose it, and the aunt's like, no, I don't want to do it. She's like, but please, like it's like because for her she was
That's
like
soothing.
that was what she needed, and it was really cool. She actually created like her own device that was for her that she could get in and like leverage, and it would compress her on the sides and like help calm her down.
Asperger's, folks. I mean, we have hundreds of examples of all of these, but
Yeah.
you're making me think of folks with Asperger's, which I know we're supposed to say autism spectrum disorders, but I still think Asperger's is very different. I'm going to carry that with the rest of my career. Please don't send me email that's hate mail. That's just the way it's going to be. So they love to pace. Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of sensory, like you said, the joke is it's the tisms. Well, your kid might want to walk and back and forth when you're lecturing them. They can't stand at attention. They need to pace.
And it doesn't mean they're not listening to you.
It really doesn't mean they're not listening to you. And there's also, well, there's just, you get the idea from our conversation. There is
Right.
a plentiful array
Endless.
of different ways that this stuff plays out.
Excuse me.
Because I had another thought about Asperger's folks, but I lost it. But they're really not being rude. They're not being disruptive or mean. The thing that they really need help with, particularly with autistic people or Asperger's folks, is they're going to do awkward behaviors in public that are embarrassing, particularly to their kids. And they need to understand, like, okay, I can't, this is what I lost. I can't jump up and down, jump up and down, jump up and down, jump up and down when I'm waiting in the doctor's office.
Right.
But Asperger's folks find great soothing on a trampoline.
Right.
There's a famous guy, I forget who he is, but he had a room full of trampolines. And I suspect, obviously, he was on the spectrum. And that was very, like, he would sit there just bump and bump and jump and jump. And that was his thought processing time. And he came up with brilliant things.
Yeah. Like, okay, I mentioned
So-
Temple Grandin. She did a lot with, like, cow, like, oh gosh, I'm losing all my thing. But she did a lot with, like, cows and the way that they, like, the way that they process and, like, kill cows to, like, whatever. She
Okay.
did a lot of stuff with, like, humanizing that.
With what?
Like, it's okay.
Killing
Just look
cows.
into it. Y'all, don't come for me. She's a great person.
Don't come
She
for
does
me.
a lot of TED Talks. I love her. She's great.
But what'd she do to cows?
She like altered the way that they like
They made it more humane.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Neil. I was not tracking.
Did I
with
not
that
say
at
that?
all.
Humanizing and more humane are two different things.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you, Neil.
Did I say humanizing? My bad.
Yeah.
I did.
Thank you, Neil. Because I was lost there, Victoria. I'm not
they
gonna
made
lie.
she made it more humane. Like she made this whole design. Like it's
Yeah,
cool. But like
she was helping the cows.
yeah. Sorry.
That's
Look, y'all,
okay.
I'm already checked out for today. I apologize.
You are fine.
It's
So
been a
what do we
long
want to
day.
wrap up with? Using tools and supports,
Yeah.
advocating, educating.
Knowledge is power.
Here's a big piece of warning that I want to put out there for this, though. I don't sure you have found it, Victoria, just as much as I have. Is it not true to say that our ADHD folks just love weed? I have found it over the years to be a completely combined thing because
Okay.
I think it deals with these experiences that are causing disruption, and they can just tune them out more.
with the
And
weed.
With the weed. ADHD folks tend to love weed. And
I don't know if I would argue. I don't think I would argue that.
right, and I want to put a cautionary tale out about that, because that is something that will take your stress away
Yeah.
when it comes to this terrifying, horrible experience that sensory defensiveness can be.
Yeah.
But just brings on all sorts of other
Yeah. There are
troubles,
other. Yeah.
right? So be careful about
Yeah,
how
gotta
you're soothing,
cautiously approach that
right?
method.
And the last big thing that I thought about that we wanted to highlight that we've already talked about is really like, look, these things need to be identified, and when they're not disruptive to daily functioning and they are not being inappropriate in public or something, like,
Right.
mom and dad, can you please just let them be?
Right.
Teachers, let them be.
You know what that goes back to? Love and logic.
Yes, it does.
In an extent, yeah.
Yes,
to an
it does.
extent, like they
for
can
the
do.
listening audience, tell them what you mean.
Well, one of Chris's 3 pillars is love and logic parenting, which we've done episodes podcast on it. But it basically states that like you can do whatever you want to, except for when you start affecting other people or it starts impacting other people.
Right.
And then like you go in, you ask them to fix it, they don't. You say no problem, I'll fix it, but then you correct the behavior on the back end.
Right. That's a
Did I
super
get that
short.
right?
Yep, you got it. On
Yeah.
point. It's a super short, and definitely check out the Love and Logic episodes.
Right.
It's actually one of the few content pieces that we kind of redo from time to time. But you're right. This is exactly to
So
that
yeah,
end.
like if
it's
your
not
kid's
causing a problem.
spinning in circles while you're cooking dinner and
Let
they're
'em
not
spin.
bothering anything and they're not harming. I was talking about this to someone else earlier today. You're not harming yourself. You're not harming someone else. You're not harming any property or
Right.
putting anyone at risk.
Let it be.
Let it be.
Because it's something that is helping that child. I mean, classically, similarly but different. ADHD parents are like, turn the music off. And I've had countless conversations with parents to say, look, that takes their attention from all of the things that are in their mind, because they have that background music that they can study better.
Yeah.
They can literally study
There's
better.
no way you can listen to music and study at the same time.
Yeah, I
okay, well,
can't.
maybe not for you, but
I can't
can.
do that. Yeah, I can't do it.
Do
It
you,
dri-
do
right?
you see me doing notes out there while I'm playing my game?
Right.
Like, that's literally me every day.
Right. And I think there's hopefully we've gotten a little bit of awareness out there, because I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of misunderstanding about this, and it's caused
I think
way
this
more
opens
problems
up
than needs to.
amazing conversations for people to, like,
That's
begin
my
to
hope,
have.
Victoria.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait to talk about it with some of my clients.
I do love that. Closing thoughts, comments?
I'm going to stick with my, like, knowledge is power.
Yeah, I like that. So hopefully we've helped you out. If you have any of these experiences yourself, you're not crazy.
Nope.
It is terribly disruptive, and there are ways to kind of cope with this and identify it and manage it. It oftentimes is a part of conditions that you may, or as Victoria pointed out, may not have. So don't go over the board with thinking that I'm autistic just because you have some of these things going on. But when
Right.
you identify them in your students or your kids or peers, help them to understand, and don't criticize them so badly for being different, because it's really helpful and soothing to them. So hopefully we helped you with some of this.
Hopefully.
I hope you take care, stay well, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.